5 of the 6 committees of jurisdiction have the potential for subpoenas. They haven't all issued subpoenas, but that's where we see some of that activity. As you probably know, on the articles of impeachment for President Nixon, Article 3 was that he ignored the subpoenas of Congress, that he did not honor the subpoenas of Congress. This is very, very serious. Statements being made by the President of the United States has given a blanket statement that he's not going to honor any subpoenas is obstruction of justice.
All right. A little bumpy there, but I think you get the gist of what she is saying. The first time she is formally using impeachment as a possibility and laying the groundwork at the president's doorstep, saying by his ignoring these subpoenas and demands that his people testify, including, by the way, the Attorney General of the United States, the course is now set, is it? Former Cruz campaign pollster, Ted Cruz campaign pollster, I apologize, Chris Wilson, a Democratic strategist, Roger Fisk. Roger, is that taking a premature leap here? It's certainly among those issues, sort of frazzling investors a little bit. Should it be?
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me. I think what specifically triggered the reaction from the Speaker was the Attorney General's response to the question from Representative Christ about whether or not there had been communications from the Special Counsel to the Attorney General expressing reservations or any kind of contention about how the Attorney General was portraying the investigation in his 4-page summary. The Attorney General said that there were none. And then yesterday, he explained at length that there were discrepancies and there were issues. And I think when someone is an institutionalist like Speaker Pelosi,
he essentially perjured himself, right?
And that's my point, which is you can have a broad pattern of dishonesty, but when someone does that to the institution that you are the leader of, I think she looks upon it as a responsibility where that is a very specific act that she can point to as breaking faith in the separation of powers.
All right, that might be so. You guys are legal experts. I'm not. All I know, Chris Wilson, is that the report did come out. People had a chance to read the 92% of it that was not redacted. And they can decide for themselves, did he overreach or not? Now, far smarter people than I have come to the conclusion he didn't take any undue leaps. Others have said, well, obstruction is in the eye of the beholder, something that reports seemed to hint at, but didn't make a final conclusion. I'll leave people who know this stuff better to debate. What I'm wondering, though, is has the train left the station for much longer, more involved, more acrimonious, possibly much more far-reaching hearings, even impeachment hearings, than 24 hours ago we thought possible?
Well, time will tell, and I think the way the Democrats are acting on the Judiciary Committee in the House is just throwing a temper tantrum, as your last guest said, and it's unfortunate because the American public has moved on this. There has been numerous polls that have come out, and I can cite 3 or 4 off the top of my head that show that people just don't care anymore. They want the Congress to move on. They want Washington to start talking about other things, and so really we're at a point where nobody really cares about this anymore, except for the inside the Beltway press corps and a bunch of liberal activists on Twitter. And that's the problem, is those liberal activists on Twitter are the ones who are motivating and kind of directing the Democratic leadership in the House.
Then wouldn't the
it,
Attorney General then want to call his bluff and just say, all right, Nadler, I'll meet with you. I'm very comfortable in my own legal shoes. I'm happy to take any and all questions. But he's not doing so, and I can understand the reason with the separate lawyers doing the questions. I understand that, but it just fires up both sides, right?
It does, and I think he proved he's very comfortable in his own legal shoes, as you said yesterday, in front of the Senate. But what he was walking into with Nadler, whenever they brought in outside counsel, was just nothing more than a PR stunt. And I don't blame Barr at all. I mean, he stood there, he stayed there yesterday, answered every question that was given to him, and I think did so very, very emphatically. And why walk in front of a committee where you've got Jerry Nadler, who yesterday is cutting off the mics of Republican members of the committee, and 2 weeks ago gets owned and just absolutely embarrassed by Candace Owens, who made him look like just an absolute moron. I mean, it really gets to the point to where if I'm him, I wouldn't want to go in front of that committee either. And I got to tell you, I mean, the people on that committee who I think should be most upset are the Democrat members who were basically being supplanted by outside counsel. What does it say whenever your own chairman doesn't have the confidence in you to be able to sit there and ask questions, and he hires other people to come in and do it for you?
Be that as it may, Roger, I'm just wondering whether you think Democrats got to be careful here, that they could be overplaying their hand and all of a sudden look a little zealous, kind of like Republicans were going after Bill Clinton. It came back to bite their hinds. What do you think?
Right.
I do think they need to be cautious. If you come into this with an over political agenda, that's not going to work well in the long run. This needs to be driven by the facts. But I don't. In the short term, the Attorney General is doing a favor for the administration because he's serving himself up as a very attractive target for criticism. Because a lot of his performance yesterday, I think, was odd. I grew up with a very stoic and kind of law and order GOP, and I've never heard anyone talk about Republicans' feelings so much as we did yesterday. The president felt like the inquiry wasn't just, and the president felt like he was under siege. I don't know when this whole thing with feelings came in, and I don't think I'll just end here.
Bob Mueller's feelings. Then would he then, if he was strongly feeling that these obstruction issues that came up, 10 to a dozen of them, wouldn't he feel just as strongly in his own feelings to say these are indictable, these are legal challenges that must be addressed?
And I would love to see the reaction when Attorney General Holder went before the Trey Gowdies and the Jason Chafitzes of the world and said, President Obama feels like this isn't an honest accusation, so we're not going to answer it. People would lose their minds. It's not appropriate to say that the president can choose to fire someone because the accusations that are being investigated, he feels, are dishonest. That's not how the justice system works. To justify firing someone because of someone's feelings, that's not the GOP I grew up with.
All right, but then to justify firing the Attorney General because he ended up releasing a report later than many wanted and mischaracterized it, or they say mischaracterized it, is that where his job?
Well, it's clear to me that the 4-page letter was driven by the White House. I mean, some of the wording in there is so tortured.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
Well, I don't think Attorney General Barr would put in the phrase that cooperation is defined as a tacit or expressed agreement, meaning unless people sat around a table in the spring of 2016, this couldn't have been a conspiracy. That's an extremely odd and high standard to try to reach to prove a pattern of behavior, which is actually borne out in the report.
All right. I wish we had more time, but you both feel very passionately about this, that this is part of the debate and why people are getting a little concerned. Again, on this show, guys, we'll try to avoid.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you guys very much. We're done.